In the 1023, I go into detail on Capitol Rock. They had a bad situation. The whole neighborhood had turned black around the 1023 by August of '66, and they didn't get along. The people who were going into the 1023 and the local neighborhood folks, and one night some of the bikers had their motorcycles tipped over, and the next thing you know, a full-scale riot broke out. And it was written up in the Washington Post. They cut all the electrical lines, the lights went out. Jack Horn said he was playing, on stage, and a big brick came through one of the windows, and just this huge riot broke out. It was written up in the Star and the Post and Daily News, and that was the last night I believe they ever had live music in the 1023. Link Wray and
who saved Link Wray that night?
Allegedly, it was Billy Poore. Billy Poore. Billy Poore says that he was in the club that night, and they didn't know how they were going to get the guys out of the club because there was about 200 people from the hood who were basically just going haywire out there. And he said, "Look, I got my motorcycle back here. Hop on." And he gave him a purple football helmet and got him out of there and drove him back to where his apartment was at the time in Glass Manor in Prince George's County. So that was the Billy Poore story. But that was the definition of. I heard Vinnies was very rough. There's the biker
guys in the roundup.
Yeah, guys on 8th Street Southeast.
No, 1023 was rough. Guys in the roundup. These guys would drive their motorcycles right into the clubs. And Roy Clark used to play there. Oh yeah, which is true.
He drove in.
Yeah, and so did Jimmy Dean, stone drunk. They'd come in, but no, that place. It was right across from the Marine barracks. And these Marines, just gotten out of boot camp, would come in there, look around, say, "I'll take anyone in the place." Well, that's all it took. The whole place would get on. Talk about plate glass
that whole
windows.
stretch, today they call it Barracks Row, 8th Street
Yes.
Southeast.
Yeah,
Back in the 50s and 60s, it was totally different. It was called Sailors Row.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
had Ship's Cafe.
They were nasty.
You had guys. You had the Roundup right next door.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah.
You had the bandbox a little farther down. In the late 50s, there was a club there called the Red Robin.
Yeah, Red Robin,
Link Wray and the Raymond played there. And yeah, I mean, it was just places where if they didn't recognize you, you were just going to take a beating.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the police would not go into these places.
The police wouldn't go on that block. You believe me? No, that was nasty. I grew up in that neighborhood, and I'll tell you what, that was a nasty place. Even if you knew people there, don't look at somebody's girl the wrong way, you have a problem. I mean, these people were crazy. Only difference was, at that time, they didn't carry guns. I don't know.
They didn't have to.
No, those places, they were two of the roughest. 1023 was rough.
But anybody who worked those nightclubs in the 60s, 1023 or Vinnies or the places in Southeast, Southeast had some bad places too. The Shanty in the heart of Anacostia, that's now an auto garage. You had Walker's Tavern. They actually had a nightclub. It's now a market, but it was on Nichols Avenue, which today is Martin Luther King Avenue. And it was called, this was in 1965, it had been the Le Normandy restaurant, and then they turned it into a rock and roll club. It was called the Branding Iron, which was just such a bizarre name, and then it became the Beehive. And it was a pretty rough rock and roll club into the 60s, and now it's still, the building is still there, but it's like some type of supermarket.
Where did they used to pitch the handguns up on the roof when they ran out and they got raided?
1023. Elwood Brown told me. In the rare occasions when police did come into the 1023 when somebody was stabbed or something like that, immediately, if you had bikers fighting some other people, different gangs would come in there, and you had people from the PG County side, and if the cops were coming, someone would yell "cops," and everyone would stop. Automatic truce, they'd run out to the side of the building and pitch their guns up on the roof of the 1023. And Elwood Brown remembered doing that one time. He was a bass player in Link Wray and the Raymond. He said he came back, the next morning looking for his gun, and there was all these little kids from the neighborhood scurrying around up there, and they sell the guns back to the guys when they come looking for their hardware. And sadly, the 1023, when Eddie Dean of the City Paper did that article on Southeast DC, and I took him to the 1023. We went in there, and this was in the fall. I guess we went in there September of '98 when the article came out. I think in October '98. You could pull it up on the Washington City Paper website. And we went to the 1023, and it was just a shell of a building. It had been different. It had been a pizza place and some other things. And we went walking around in there. And I tried going all the way to the back. It was a pretty big cavernous rectangular structure underneath a hill. This is very bizarre. And we walked in there and I turned a corner and there's all these bodies. And it was a crack house. And they were just flopped out. And I looked down and I'd almost stepped on a guy. I didn't even see it. And I said, whoa, and I took off. And Eddie goes, where are you going? And he took a look and he goes, I'm right behind you. And we went out. It didn't get into the article, but they took a photographer out there and took like the last picture of the tent. I snapped a picture of it too, because within like a year it was torn down, and now there's a big housing development there. And I memorized the exact front door of where the 1023 was. I went up there and it's somebody's garage now. You know, there's a house on its old site. But I would love to have video footage of what it was like inside that club. I tried to track down the owner, Robert Taylor, and he had passed away. And it was just, I mean, just an amazing, amazing nightclub, the stuff that went in there. I don't know how they made money or how they stayed open. There's just...
If you knew one person in the group, you were okay.
Well, the night they had that riot in August of '66, the papers published the name of the guy, Wallace Poole. He had exited the club, I guess, when the power got cut, and a gang from the neighborhood grabbed him and chopped his ear off. They sliced his ear off with a knife. And Wallace Poole still lives in his home down in Camp Springs, and I thought about going and approaching him and trying to talk to him about that, but, you know, I don't, hey guy, don't you want to talk about 42 years ago when they cut your ear off at the 1023? How do you approach something like that? So, but it made headlines, and it was not, and the funniest thing is that Senator Byrd, you know, I guess he's a senator, the Democrat guy from West Virginia, he came over and made a big public show and said, we have to crack down on violence in Southeast D.C. And I don't think it worked too well.
No.
But there's certain events that signal the end of these eras, the beatnik era and this rock era. They're different time frames, right?
I think that it's more symbolic than actual cutoff dates, but I definitely think in 1965 when the U.S. stepped up in the Vietnam War, that changed a lot. Because the counterculture, the hippies, they were made, when you look back, now this may just be how it was portrayed in the media, because I'm going on newspaper articles, but what really drove the whole counterculture was protesting the Vietnam War. It's much more intense. It's not like it was today, the thing in Iraq. I say today it's revolution by text message and email. It wasn't, they didn't have computers, they didn't have this stuff. It wasn't a part-time thing. I mean, these people were rabid. And I think that when that happened and they started growing the hair long, to this day I don't know what compelled people in their 20s of college age. So number one, if you liked rock and roll, it seems like you had to grow your hair long, you had to smoke pot or take acid, and you had to protest the war. They all just came hand. I don't know if it was forced on them through the media, but it's amazing that that is what everybody was doing back then.
Draft card.
Yeah, turn the draft card. It was amazing, and you really get a feel for it when you go and look at the Diamondback newspaper, University of Maryland. They had the huge May Day demonstrations in 1970 and 71. It was it was a very scary time.
Well, I left in December of '64.
That was a world of difference from
yes,
what the Beat Generation was doing.
When I came back, the whole world would change.
The Beat Generation was into poetry. I mean, it was a literary movement. Yeah, it was a social movement because they looked alike and dressed alike, but their main driving force was expressionistic poetry without the boundaries. That's what I take from the Beat Generation.
What were the years of these, loud-ass rock bars that you've been talking about?
Oh, it really started with Vinnies. Well, actually, the Rendezvous was a pretty rough place, and that was 58 and 59 down on 10th Street. From 61 to 64, you had Vinnies at 10th and I should know the address. It was around 10th and H.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact address, but it's in Capitol Rock. That was 60 to 64. Vinnies closed, and automatically, like the next day, Link Wray and the Raymen went from working Vinnies to working at the 1023 in Southeast, and they were playing there 7 nights a week until that riot in August of '66. And then they moved immediately to the Famous, which was on New York Avenue, right across the street from the Rocket Room. And so the crowd kind of followed them. But when the bikers at Vinnies went to this place over in far southeast at 1023, it was, you had other bikers in there. They didn't get along. You had
PG bikers as well.
It sounds as if that was sort of a succession of bars rather than a whole lot of bars existing at one time.
Well, you had a lot of bars going at the same time, but the ones that had this intense, violent energy, you know, it basically went Rendezvous, Vinnies, 1023, and those were really and guys on 8th Street Southeast. 8th Street Southeast was just below Capitol Hill, so it was a little different. Guys was very rough too, but that was near
around the boat.
It was near the Navy Yard there, so yeah, they were next door to each other. And Guys was out by, I think, the end of 1967. It became Goldie's Tavern after that. But when Guys went down, they started, it really, 8th Street kind of started losing its violent edge. And in the 70s, they really, urban renewal came in and they wiped everything. The buildings are still there, but all the businesses changed over. A lot of those places were vacant. And you go down there now, what was the Roundup is now a DuPont paint store. What was Guys is now a straightforward family restaurant. I think it's Martin's, I'm not sure. Ship's Cafe, I think, is an art gallery. Again, all those addresses, I think, are in Capitol Rock, and you can just go down there and check it out and see what it is today.